Hello everyone, welcome to my latest video. Okay, well I decided to do this. It's a little bit off the cuff, so you'll have to excuse if it doesn't sound as polished as usual, if I am polished indeed. But I decided, since I do a lot of reviews of really shitty films that are so bad they're good, I thought that I would do a video on films that are so good they're good. So, for those of you who have watched my reviews, you probably got the gist that I like genre films. If you don't know what a genre film is, it's basically the films that the Academy ignores. The kind of supernatural, B-movie, superhero type things that are sci-fi, horror, things like that. I don't usually like the historical dramas or Academy Award-winning films, things like that. I watch genre movies, and that's my favorite type of movie, is horror comedies, horror in general. So that's mostly what it's going to be focused around. So, without further ado, this is 30 genre films that don't suck. This isn't a definitive list. It's not even really all of the films that I like. Some of them, there's other ones that I like that aren't genre films, other ones that are, but these are just the ones that I saw in my collection. I thought it would be good to recommend. Some of them are obvious, some of them not so much. The only order that really counts is I saved the best one for last. So, without further ado, number 1, Silver Bullet. Silver Bullet might not be as well known. It's a Stephen King movie, and it's about, it's a werewolf story, and it's based off of a novelette that Stephen King did, Cycle of the Werewolf, I think is what it's called. It's underrated, I think. It's certainly not, it's got its cheesy moments in it. It stars Corey Haim when he was really young. He plays, I think his name's Marty, I don't remember his name, but he's a little kid who's in a wheelchair, and he thinks that the people that are dying in town has been caused by a werewolf, and people don't believe him. And it also has Gary Busey as his uncle, and his performance is really good in that. Like, he plays to his strengths there, because he plays kind of his drunk black sheep of the family uncle who's, you know, I liked that his character didn't treat Haim's character like a kid. He kind of goofed around with him, treated him like an equal. And there's also a rocket-powered wheelchair in this movie, which you wouldn't think for a Stephen King movie, but it's there. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor in it. Some stuff is kind of cheesy in it, some on purpose, some not, so it might seem a little off in tone to you if you're used to some other of the better Stephen King movies. But if you like werewolf movies, it's a good one to check out, especially around Halloween, and you can usually find it for pretty cheap in some places. Number 2, Transylvania 65000. Transylvania 65000 is kind of cheesy. Not really for everyone. It depends on what kind of horror you like, because it's definitely not on the serious side at all. It's more kind of a callback to those Abbott and Costello kind of things. And it's got like the classic monsters in it with some twists, and it's got a lot of familiar actors in it. It's got Carole King, Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, Ed Begley Jr., a lot of other comedic actors that you recognize. Michael Richards is in this, and before his whole controversy, he was actually really funny in this, and he pretty much made the movie. And if you read anything about the movie or listen to the commentary, you know that he made up almost everything that he did on set. He just played around. There were a lot of troubles with this shoot, and if you really want to see something interesting, buy the DVD and listen to the commentary for this movie, because the director has pretty much disowned it. He talks over it and talks about pretty much how much he hates it. and it's kind of amusing to see it because he's not promoting it at all, and it's really not that bad of a movie. It just had a lot of production problems. But you wouldn't really know it watching it. You'd think it's just sort of a cheap callback type movie, and there's a lot of genuinely funny moments in it from a lot of the supporting cast, and I like Jeff Goldblum too, and he kind of carries the movie himself. So there's that. If you like that type of old style monster humor, then you'll like this one. Number 3, The Frighteners. Now, a lot of you have probably heard of The Frighteners, so I don't know how much I need to go over it, but if you don't know, it stars Michael J. Fox. It's by Peter Jackson, when he did a lot of horror movies. I think Peter Jackson was great at horror movies. And he's very good at combining humor and horror, but in a genuine way. I talked about Transylvania 65000. It's a little bit on the corny side, and I like it, but I kind of prefer the type of humor horror where it plays to both sides of the spectrum. And The Frighteners does a pretty good job of that. There's some kind of gory things in it. It's a more grown-up role, I guess, for Michael J. Fox, which, if you're more familiar with him in Back to the Future and Teen Wolf and things like that, it's a little more on the rated R side. And he's basically he plays a guy who had a traumatic event happen to him where his wife died, and after that happened he's able to see ghosts, and the movie is about him seeing these ghosts, and he sees these numbers on people's foreheads, which means that they're going to die and something is killing them, and so he's got to figure out what that is, and kind of deal with spiritual troubles. And I know I'm not making it sound that great, but those of you who've seen it know that it's good. Those of you who haven't seen it, it's a good one to check out, especially if you like things like Dead Alive, which is not on this list just because I don't really own it, but I would recommend it if you would care to see more horror comedy type stuff. Number 4, Stranger Than Fiction. This is a really odd movie. If for those of you who haven't heard of it, it stars Will Ferrell, who is a man who starts hearing a narrator who is narrating his life, basically. And he finds out through this narrator that he's going to die, and he has to figure out how to stop his death from happening and sort of come to terms with his mortality. And do the things that he wanted to do in his life. And it's a really strange movie. It's not a horror movie, so that's new for me on this list. But it's not a Will Ferrell movie. If you're just thinking, oh, it's got Will Ferrell in it, well, it's got to be just this goofy kind of toilet humor type thing. But it's really not, and it was a good surprise to me. Because Will Ferrell is actually a really good dramatic actor, and he doesn't do that a lot. He's good at comedy as well, but I liked that this played the line between comedy and humor. Like, most of the comedy comes from how serious this situation is for him and how his life is falling apart because of this narrator, and it's a lot of genuine humor. Like, there's not a lot of screaming, running around in underwear or anything like that, which has its place, but not in this type of movie. And it's a good drama and a nifty little movie that might just surprise you. Number 5, Ghostbusters. Alright, you've seen Ghostbusters. You know what Ghostbusters is. If you've been living under a rock, then you need to go out and see Ghostbusters. But I will say that this is another one that, it plays the horror and comedy thing together, mostly on the comedy side, but it's got really great characters in it, which carries the story really well. And I liked the performance that was put into it. It really wouldn't have been the same movie with other actors. It really was a product of the time and the people that worked on it. And the sequel was okay. I liked it alright, but it definitely doesn't live up to what the first one was. But if I'm gonna make a list of films that don't suck, that's definitely one of them. Number 6, Sleepy Hollow. Okay, so this one's not... Some people might disagree on this one. This is the Tim Burton Sleepy Hollow. And I'm not a Tim Burton fangirl. Like, I don't love everything he puts out. But I do think when he's trying, he can do very good movies. And this is one of the times where he did a remake or adaptation where I liked the way he interpreted it. It didn't seem like over-bloated or too much CGI or too self-indulgent. It seemed like he was genuinely trying to tell a story that had been told a lot in a different way. And I liked that they focused more on the horror angle for it. Tried to do some character quirks with Ichabod Crane, kind of focus on that. And it's just a different way of telling the story. It's definitely not true to the books exactly, but I liked the horror angle they took. Christopher Walken did a great job with a role that has no lines, and the soundtrack is really good. The soundtrack, you know, Danny Elfman can do really great soundtracks, and sometimes they're not so great, but generally he does a really great job with them, and I liked this one. Number 7, The Craft. Okay, yeah, I know that Lindsay talked about it a little bit, but The Craft is a movie about a girl who moves to a new school, and she's got powers of sorts, and she meets these sort of outcast girls who also have powers, and they form a coven of witches together, and they find out that when they put all their powers together, they can get whatever they want. And of course, when they get what they want, they start to change. You get to find out that when you get everything that you want, it kind of changes people for the worse sometimes. It's sort of a nifty teen movie type thing that kind of has some cool effects that they mostly do practically. There's a really gross scene near the end of the movie with all these bugs and snakes and things. Like, it's genuinely pretty gross, but yeah, I liked the characters in this movie, and you like watching the girls even after they've turned kind of unlikable, kind of turn against each other. Fairuza Balk is really good in it, and she plays a villain really well. It's kind of like a grown-up version of her worst witch character. And you know, this was the first DVD that I ever bought, the first R-rated movie I ever watched, because I'd seen it on TV, and yeah, it's well put together. If you like sort of 90s witchcraft type movies, then this is the one for you. Number 8, Jekyll and Hyde the Musical. Okay, look, just work with me on this one. Believe me when I say that Jekyll and Hyde the Musical, starring David Hasselhoff, is actually a good movie. It surprised me too, because for those of you who don't know, Hasselhoff decided that he wanted to do something on Broadway, and that's one of the things that he wanted to do in his life, and so he was cast in Jekyll and Hyde the Musical, which was recorded and put on DVD. So it's technically not a film, it's a recorded production, but it's put together really well, and he genuinely surprised me with his performance in it. I think it was because there really wasn't any schmaltz put into it, not the typical Hasselhoff type thing. He was playing the character really well, and you could tell that he was coached by the people on Broadway, and they helped him a lot to find the character and to put more into it. And I like the songs a lot. I like the musical. It's a good dramatic adaptation of the story, and it's a good tragedy. So, if you like musicals, and it's kind of offbeat things, not your typical type musical, I would check it out, because I think you might be surprised too. So, That's really all I gotta say about that one. Number 9. Jurassic Park 1 and 2. Okay, I'm putting these two together. Jurassic Park, everyone and their mom has seen it. It's a really good movie, and, you know, say what you will about Jurassic Park 2, that's actually my favorite of the Jurassic Park trilogy. I like Jeff Goldblum a lot, which was part of it, because I felt like it was nice to see more of his character, where he's not injured for half the movie. And I thought there was a little bit more excitement put into the second one, since obviously, you know, there was all the build-up in the first one for the dinosaurs. And that works in its own way too, because you get to explore these great characters and see these great sets. And when the dinosaurs finally do show up, they've built up it's a good build-up for it. And we'll just pretend that Jurassic Park 3 never happened. And that's that. Number 10. An American Werewolf in London. If you have not seen An American Werewolf in London, go out, rent it, go buy it actually. An American Werewolf in London is a film by John Landis that he wrote when he was younger. John Landis, if you aren't familiar with who he is, he's directed a lot of things, and he's probably most famous for Animal House, before he did American Werewolf in London, which was surprising that, you know, when he makes this, which is probably why it works so well for me, because he was so known for comedies. When he did this horror movie, he was able to put the two together fairly well, and it's mostly on the horror side. But the reason that it works so well, and the reason that you sympathize with the main character, is because he's such a normal, likable person. And they don't try to make it dark, they try to make it like a normal person would act, and they kind of set up this romance with him and this nurse. And when things start happening, you know, he realizes he's a werewolf, when people start dying, when his dead friend shows up, you genuinely feel sympathetic for him, and you want him to be able to find a cure for this or fix this. And that's what makes the whole story so tragic, but so funny at the same time, because he has to deal with these ghosts following him around, and you know, they're trying to tell him how to kill himself, and it's just a genuinely well-made movie, and the practical effects still hold up now much better than anything CGI could ever pull off, and it's still the best transformation scene in a werewolf movie. And if you like practical effects, if you are genuinely interested in what goes into them, I would watch the commentaries and the special features for this movie, because it really does show a lot of helpful things. It pioneered a lot of things that in practical effects that are still being used today, and that's still it's still one of the best werewolf movies made, so I'd check it out. Number 11. Little Monsters. You know what? Forget what Doug said. Forget what Doug said. Little Monsters is a great movie. Little Monsters was my favorite movie as a kid, and I used to rent it all the time. And one of the things that I liked about it when I was a kid was how dark it was. And I know that's why Doug didn't really like it, because it seems a little mean-spirited. But I think that's because it's not really a happy, fun kids film. It's got explosions and cussing in it, and I liked that it was a kids movie that was a little bit darker, and it had some serious moments in it. You know, they have the kid doing goofy stuff with the monsters under the bed, but they also have moments, you know, we're dealing with the parents' divorce, and moments where they do try to be dramatic with it, and they aren't trying to be goofy all the time. And, you know, I talked about some of the scores of these movies here, but I really do love the Little Monsters score. And if you ever have a chance to listen to it, I would, because it's kind of melancholy, especially for a movie. You know, it's like, oh, goofy monsters under the bed, boys playing, and goofy, messy things, you know, and then they have this soft, kind of understated piano score, which makes the movie feel more genuine to me. And that's one of the reasons that I loved it as a kid, and, you know, it made me feel like I wanted to have a friend like that. And it is a good kids movie. It's just not for everyone. It's definitely more on the dark side, but I think you'd probably enjoy it if you gave it a chance. Number 12, Edward Scissorhands. Edward Scissorhands, another good Tim Burton movie. Like I said, I don't love everything that Tim Burton puts out, but I do love it when he puts some effort in. And I love that it's a retelling of a familiar story that you don't even realize it's retelling at first. And it took me a long time to figure that out, that, you know, it's retelling the Frankenstein story, but in a different way, and they still do it tragically like the other one. I mean, it's not as tragic as the Frankenstein story, obviously, but it has a very melancholy end. It has another pretty soundtrack, and you find yourself really liking the family that he's staying with. You really like Johnny Depp's performance, and I liked the little details of the movie that it made everything a little quirkier, and yeah, it was just a well-made movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, you probably should. Number 13, The Lost Boys. The Lost Boys is a great vampire movie. And it's another one of those that it's got horror and humor and action and style. And it's well shot. Like, there's a lot of interesting things to look at. And you like Kiefer Sutherland's performance. He makes a cool vampire. Everything's very cool in this movie. Except for Corey Haim, which I thought made it a lot funnier. And Corey Feldman and the other guy, I really don't remember his name, the Frog Brothers, they were really cool characters, and they were a lot of fun to watch, and, you know, I like that the movie took a little bit to build up, and then when they have the big battle against the vampires, it was really cool. But I wouldn't recommend the sequels. I've only seen the second movie that they made, and it just, as a vampire movie, it's not bad, but as a sequel, it has nothing that you watch the first movie for, which was the characters. Again, a lot of movies forget that it really is the characters that carry the film, and not just the idea. But this was done in a really cool way. You know, it has some of the same ideas that you see in vampire movies. You know, you have a coven of vampires together, and then a leader, and, you know, kind of trying to bring one into the fold. But they did it in a cool way, and it's a very 80s movie, but it's a nifty one to see. And if nothing else, you can enjoy the sweaty saxophone player. Number 14, Fright Night. I talked about Fright Night a little bit in my Fright Night 2 review. And, you know, how I feel about Fright Night 2, if you've seen my review of it. But the original Fright Night is still a really good vampire movie as well. And it's different than The Lost Boys in that, you know, it does play up the sexiness a little bit with the vampire. But it's also kind of back to the old style Dracula type thing, the ugly vampires, they're gonna suck your blood and kill you, and there's nothing cool about that, and kind of brought the old style vampire movies of the Vampire Hunter, like the Roddy McDowell ones, with the kind of new modern type vampire tales. And it's really funny the way they do it, and it's scary, and they got some really cool practical effects. So check that one out. Number 15, Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is fun, and I like Gina Davis's performance in it. You know, everyone did a really great job in it. There's some nifty practical effects, and really the movie is carried by Michael Keaton, who is in surprisingly little of it, considering. But everything that he did was really cool. It was really funny, and really carried the movie with all these quirky characters and sets. And it really is one of those Tim Burton at his best type movies, because it has his signature style, but it's not overly indulgent, and it's not just style over substance. So yeah, it's a funny genre film, and I think you'd probably enjoy it if you haven't seen it.